Let's go back to the beginning, where we were talking about attachment and strange situations tests and stuff like this. Let's say that I have an infant who reacts to the strange situations test. And you recall that involves being left, having the mother leave the child in an unfamiliar situation to note how the child behaves when left and how the child behaves when the mother returns. As an infant reacts to the strange situations test by appearing anxious around mom and strangers, becoming very upset over separations, and remaining near mother, clinging on to her, maybe clinging on to her skirt or legs in the reunion episode, although preferring not to hug mom around the neck and kiss her directly. Ainsworth would likely classify this youngster's attachment as avoidant, resistant, disorganized, disoriented, or secure. Resistant is right. Excellent. Mothers who are generally affectionate but tend to respond to their child when they, in other words, the mother, when you read the word they feel like being responsive, are likely to have children who are securely attached, avoidant, resistant, disorganized, disoriented. What?
Securely.
There's only one more left. What? What's the last one? No, she said. No, there's one more that she didn't name. So it would have to be resistant. In other words, where you get a mom who's basically a decent person who cares about you, but is likely to react to the infant more in terms of her own, that is, the mom's own needs, than the infant's, where she may misread things and project her needs onto the infant, is likely to have a kid with resistant attachment. Not a bad mom, really. Not the best, but the best style, but far from the worst. All right, let's do another one. Critics of Ainsworth's attachment theory, like a guy like Jerome Kagan, believe that the strange situations test really measures individual differences in what, rather than the quality of infant attachments, infant intelligence, infant curiosity, infant temperament, maternal caregiving. Temperament is right. Kagan would argue that it measures individual differences in infant temperament rather than quality of infant attachments. Good. Let's do yet another. Harry Harlow and his associates discovered that motherless mother monkeys raised without their natural mothers, tend to be nurturant toward their firstborn offspring, become quite competent in their social and sexual responsiveness toward other adult monkeys, raise offspring that show a normal pattern of social development. All of the above. Interestingly not. Become quite competent in their social and sexual responsiveness toward other adult monkeys?
No,
The one after that. C.
Raise offspring that show a normal pattern of social development? Yes, interestingly enough. Motherless mother monkeys tend to raise offspring that show a normal pattern of social development, even though they themselves are not especially normal. Very interesting. There's something about the idea of having a child, having a baby, that may be very, very interesting. All right. Psychoanalyst Margaret Mahler, Mahler, would agree with Piaget and George Herbert Mead. Mahler would agree with Piaget and George Herbert Mead that cognitive development stems from social development. Infants have a primitive sense of self at birth. Infants are born without a sense of self. Infants may never be totally incapable of distinguishing themselves from the surrounding environment.
C.
Infants are born without a sense of self. That's the one. You got it. Yes, sir. Whoa, when asked where dreams come from, young Jordan says, in my head, and you can't see them. Don't you try. This indicates he has developed a categorical self, some knowledge of his physical limitations, a positive self-concept, some knowledge of the private self.
Knowledge of physical limitations?
Nope.
Private self.
Private self. He doesn't have limitations. You do, because you can't see it. It's in my head. You can't see it, but I can. That's his private self, isn't it? You can't see him. I've got my own private self. All right. Some knowledge of the private self. Let's move on. John is highly concerned about comparing himself with his peers to establish his social status and academic competencies. Very much into comparisons of how he's doing in school and all that. He's probably experiencing the psychosocial crisis that Erikson termed autonomy versus shame and doubt, identity versus competence, industry versus inferiority, initiative versus guilt.
B.
Which was that?
Identity versus.
What?
Identity versus.
No, not that one.
No one asked it.
What?
What was the next one?
I'll just read them all. Autonomy versus shame and doubt, initiative versus guilt, industry versus inferiority, identity versus competence. What do you think?
Industry inferiority.
Yes, you got it. To be industrious is to be competent and to strive to do your very best, isn't it? So you would be likely to compare yourself with other people to make sure you're on top of things and that you compare well with these other people, right? By the way, when is that stage entered into? Do you know?
Grade school.
Industry versus inferiority?
Is it grade school?
6 to 12. Essentially, it's those years 6 to 12. Which is what period for Freud, by the way? Anybody remember that?
Was phatic?
Is it latent?
What's after that?
Latent.
Latency is right. Now, 15-year-old John works in the summer only to have money to support his automobile and his social life and his smokes. He has little idea what he would like to do as an adult, but feels he can't be bothered with these decisions when there's so much fun to be had. Fun and all that stuff. He appears to be in what identity status? Moratorium, foreclosure, diffusion, achievement, or stupidity. What?
Moratorium.
Really? In what way?
Foreclosure.
He can't be bothered with these decisions. Doesn't sound like he's in crisis. Moratorium often involves crisis but not yet commitment, right? Where you're weighing your options. It's kind of a time-off period. Got another guess? What? Diffusion is right. Little idea what he'd like to do as an adult, feels he can't be bothered. The heck with it. I don't have any long-term goals. Sounds like diffusion to me too. Let's do another one. Recent research on the adolescent identity crisis. The adolescent identity crisis reveals that the college experience typically accelerates the process of identity formation. Most people resolve their identity crises much later than Erikson had assumed they would. Most adolescents do not experience an identity crisis. Most people resolve their identity crises much later than Erikson had assumed they would. That's right. That's the best answer. That's exactly right. College experience accelerates the identity process? Maybe, maybe not. But most people resolve it much later. It's not resolved often until the mid-20s or later, 25, 28. Let's do another one. The best predictor of a toddler's ability. The best predictor of a toddler's ability to delay immediate gratification is the toddler's gender, IQ, language development, self-esteem, or achievement motivation.
Language development.
Language development, yes. Toddlers, yeah. Language development. Better than achievement motivation, we really have choices. To delay immediate gratification. It's also the best predictor of what autistic kids will do better. Those with better language development tend to hear better than ones without. Let's do another one. Your neighbor failed an important test and is seeking a causal attribution. To what might he attribute this failure and have the best chance of feeling he'll do better on other exams? Much better. I failed because I'm not too bright. I failed because I didn't study enough. Bad luck. The test tapped the material I studied only briefly. I failed because many of the questions were too darn ambiguous. In effect, I failed because I didn't study enough?
Yeah.
You got it! Let's do another one. According to Zajonk's mental mediation or confluence hypothesis, the presence of siblings in the household helps kids to achieve their full intellectual potentials. A child's intellectual development depends on the average intellectual level of all family members. Achievement training provided by a single parent should lead to higher levels of intellectual development than training provided by two parents.
Depends on all family members.
What?
Depends on all family members.
Depends on all family members. Exactly right. The intellectual development and hence capacity for achievement depends on the average intellectual level of all family members. All right.
Is it the one that's an average?
I'm sorry.
Is it the average of all family members?
Well, that was adjuncts. That's exactly right. Yes. There it is. It's right on the board. The dichotomy between instrumental roles for men and expressive roles for women. Instrumental roles for men, instrumental in bringing home the lion's share of what is needed to support the family, being a strong support and such. Instrumental for women, being expressive for women, being expressive emotionally, being nurturant, and this sort of thing. In effect, the dichotomy is applicable only in Western society, is applicable only in third world pre-literate cultures, is held nowhere in the egalitarian climate of the 1900s, is widely held around the world.
It's widely
held around the world.
Widely held around the world is the answer. In fact, yes. Here we go. The sex role stereotypes. The sex role stereotypes held by 3 to 6 year olds are more flexible than those of 17-year-olds, inconsistent from day to day, inflexible with respect to occupations that males and females might pursue, rigid and inflexible. Yep, rigid and inflexible is right. Age 3, age 4, kind of thing, very inflexible. Gets much more flexible by age 9, and then again less flexible in early adolescence. The timing of puberty effect. The timing of puberty effect. Timing of puberty accounts for gender differences in activity levels and aggression. Refers to the tendency of those who reach maturity relatively late to perform better on visual spatial tasks than those who mature early. Refers to the tendencies of those who reach puberty early to perform better on visual spatial tasks than those who mature late. Refers to the fact that females reach puberty sooner than males do.
B.
in effect, refers to the tendency of those who reach puberty relatively late to perform better on visual spatial tasks than those who mature early. You got it again.
Could you say that one time?
Refers to the tendency of those who reach maturity relatively late. In other words, physical maturity relatively late to perform better on visual spatial tasks than those who mature early. Reach puberty, who that is, who reach puberty relatively late. All right, and those who mature early. All right, let's do another. These are such fun, we don't want to stop, do we? The high level of self-esteem. The high level of self-esteem found in androgynous people. High level of self-esteem found in androgynous people conflicts with their high level of social anxiety. It's difficult to understand since peers rate androgynous people as less popular than more traditional sex-type males. Seems to reflect the masculine component of androgyny. None of the above.
None of the above.
Oh yes, one of the above.
C.
What?
C.
Which one?
C.
Which is?
Reflects the masculinity.
That's right. In effect, seems to reflect the masculine component of androgyny, which both males and females who are androgynous would have, right? Because they incorporate both tendencies. Now, let's do another one. A mugger who attacks a victim in order to obtain the victim's money is engaging in tomfoolery, subliminal aggression, hostile aggression, vicarious hostility, instrumental aggression, none of the above.
Hostile aggression.
Instrumental.
In effect, his attack is instrumental in obtaining the victim's money. It would be hostile if the attack was meant to hurt the guy, pulverize him. All right. The incidence of hostile aggression peaks. The incidence of hostile aggression peaks during the preschool period, during the elementary school years, early in adolescence, during late adolescence.
Early adolescence.
Early adolescence is the correct answer. Yes. Yep. Let's do another. The rate of violent crime is highest among middle-class adolescent white males. White male adolescents from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Lower-class adolescent males. Minority male adolescents from middle-class socioeconomic backgrounds.
C. Lower class.
C. Lower class.
Lower-class adolescent males, right. It tends to be a socioeconomic effect rather than a racial effect. Lower-class adolescent males, highest rate of violent crime. Let's see if there are any others. If these are not rolling off your tongue, you probably need a good bit of study. Let's see if there are any others. The remarkably positive outcomes of Asian adoptees studied by Clark and Hannessy back in the early 80s can be attributed to Asian adoptees. Why did they do so well? The fact that these youngsters were adopted in the first year of life, the fact that Asians have become genetically resistant to the effects of early deprivation, attributed to the education influence of their adopted families, attributed to the relatively mild early deprivation that these youngsters had experienced.
C.
Which one?
The one that they're educated and fluid.
That's right. The adoptive families, the parents, being educated, highly educated, and affluent. Attending more books, stimulation, that kind of thing. Let's do another. Preschool correlates. preschool, before school starts, correlates of insecure infant attachment include. Preschool correlates of insecure infant attachments include curiosity and problem-solving behavior, high achievement on individual tasks, but poor achievement on group tasks, seeking positions of power and dominance in the peer group, a degree of social and emotional withdrawal.
Social and
Social and emotional.
Yep. Preschool correlates of insecure infant attachment include a degree of social and emotional withdrawal. You are correct. The first social categories that kids place themselves and others into when constructing a categorical sense of self are size and age, size and gender, gender and age, gender and race. What do you think? Gender and age is right. Exactly right. You have it. All right. During early adolescence, ages 11 to 14, most 11 to 14-year-olds show a noticeable decline in self-esteem, experience serious emotional turmoil, have poor relationship with parents, show no appreciable decline in self-esteem.
Okay, show decline in self-esteem.
No appreciable decline in self-esteem is right. I think I mentioned that in lecture, did I not? I do believe, huh? Good. No appreciable decline. There can be barometric dips, but no appreciable decline. All right. Let's say I graduated from high school and I joined the Army to give me some time to decide whether to go to college or what career to pursue. This decision of what to do has been weighing on me heavily for the past few months, and I see the Army as giving me a chance to think about things. What identity status am I currently? What? Go ahead.
Moratorium.
You got it! Moratorium is right. We don't need those choices. Very, very good. Erickson's claimed that achieving a stable identity is necessary for establishing what? Establishing ego integrity, intimacy, industriousness. Intimacy is right. That's right. Before you can be close to others, you need to know yourself and have a stable identity so you're not too preoccupied with yourself. If you're too preoccupied, you can't go on with the rest of the people. This claim has been confirmed or disconfirmed by subsequent research. Has it been confirmed or disconfirmed? Actually confirmed that in effect, in order to achieve intimacy, we have first to achieve a reasonably clear sense of our own identity. Confirmed. All right. I think we're good. Any questions at all? Should we do any exam 3 material or just skip it?
Skip it.
Skip it. Excellent. By virtually unanimous vote. All right, 80 questions. You need Scantron machine.